Recently, Verizon had to use tiny red balls to try to make you think they had a much better network than Sprint. But there's one big thing they left out. The new Sprint LTE Plus network delivers faster download speeds than Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. While Verizon seems to be focused on tiny balls, Sprint has been obsessively focused on building the network of the future. And to celebrate, Sprint is cutting their rates in half. Switch to Sprint and save 50% on most Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile rates. You get the new Sprint LTE Plus network with faster download speeds than Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. And we'll even cover your cost to switch, up to $650 per line. Only from Sprint. Better for less.
Claim based on Sprint's analysis of average LTE download speeds using Nielsen and MP data. Speeds may vary. Offer coverage not available everywhere. Excludes taxes, surcharges, add-on, and premium content. Subject to new line port activation fee and credit. See website for eligible plans. Savings through 1/8/18 after pay full amount. Restrictions apply. Buy every reward card after online registration and phone turn-in.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. This is Jerry Siegel speaking on behalf of the Time to Play Foundation with our weekly Business Success Strategies podcast. And this program is being brought to you by Time to Play, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation whose mission and purpose is to enrich the lives of others through programs, public awareness, and outreach activities, events, and learning opportunities that further the concept of enjoying life. You can find further information on timetoplay.com. And as I said, today we're talking about business success. And one of the essential ingredients for business success, as we've touched on in previous podcasts, is planning for growth. We all, when we're in business, look to grow, we look to build business, but it is essential that we plan in advance for the business that we hopefully will obtain and acquire, because otherwise we're putting ourselves in a position where the likelihood of success is minimal. In fact, it's been determined that one of the main reasons for business failure is rapid growth. Rapid growth did not allow for proper planning, and as a result, systems and procedures and processes were not in place, and they led to the eventual downfall of that business organization. Planning and goal setting, as we've touched on before, are two of the most important activities for any business leader, any business owner, because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? In addition to which, since one of the challenges that every business leader, every entrepreneur faces is time, knowing where you're going to go next ahead of time, spending time to plan your day, prioritize your activities, your goals for the day are critical, because you never have to stop and think, what am I going to do next? And stopping to think, what am I going to do next, always costs a certain amount of time. Sometimes that could just be seconds, sometimes it could be minutes, or sometimes it can be a whole lot longer than that, because it can cause you to not know where to go, and that may cause you to start looking for things to work on. It may result in you having to stop and think, what is most important? What do I need to do next? And each one of those stops creates a lapse in time. As I said, it may not be tremendous, but seconds add up to minutes, minutes add up to hours, and hours add up to days. And when we're trying to accomplish anything, we want to be sure that we know what we need to do, and we can just go ahead and take on whatever particular activity is involved. So when we talk about planning for growth, we talk about trying to develop a strategy to determine what we're going to do next. Now, in previous calls, we've talked about the need for a business plan, which is number one. Besides the business plan, we need a budget, and we need long-range goals. When I say long-range goals, we're talking about goals that are necessary for at least 3 or 4 years out in the business. And then we bring those back into shorter range goals so that we know what we want to accomplish, first of all, this year. Secondly, we'll break this year down into months, and we know in advance what the goals would be for January through December. And then we can take those shorter range goals and break them down into still shorter range. We can break the monthly goals down into weekly, and we can break the weekly goals down into daily goals. When we do those things, we certainly will know in advance what we have to do, and we'll be in much better able to proceed and accomplish the things that we need to do. Now, I mentioned earlier that planning for growth is certainly critical, because if we grow without plans, we are really putting ourselves in a position where we're not going to be able to service our clients or customers. We're not going to be able to deliver the products or services that we are in business to provide. And obviously, we're not going to be able to satisfy and provide for the needs of the customers or clients that we have been able to obtain. Many companies begin with a terrific marketing program, and marketing brings them customers, it brings them clients, but those people that have been brought to the organization need to be able to be provided with whatever services, whatever merchandise, whatever the particular organization is providing, if they're going to remain and stay with that organization. So we need to know what we are going to be able to have for our customers, how we're going to be able to provide for their needs. It's easy to say we're going to give you X, Y, and Z, we're going to do for you A, B, and C, but all of those items require knowing what it is that you're going to offer, what it is that you're going to provide. So doing that and spending time in advance is essential in order to accomplish what we need to do. I see we have somebody else on the line today. Let me ask them to introduce themselves. And before I do that, let me go back, because I neglected to introduce myself properly on today's podcast. I'm Jerry Siegel. My company is JASB Management. We're in the business of management training and development, executive coaching, and goal setting. We have had the opportunity to work with many executives to try to help them make their business better by finding items that they can eliminate, they can simplify, or they can delegate to others, by learning some of the skills that are necessary to run a successful business. I'm talking about skills like communication, delegation, goal setting, leadership, management, motivation, personal and organizational development, as well as time management. All of those areas involve multiple skill sets, and all of those skills are necessary if a business is to be successful in the long term. And one of the reasons we are providing these business podcasts is that very few organizations are successful for the long term. Entrepreneurs have great ideas, they have great dreams, and they may have a lot of knowledge and a lot of intelligence, but running a business, as we've shared before in the podcast, is never easy. It requires the ability to be a salesperson. It requires the ability to know whether you're going to go it alone or you're going to go with partners. It requires the ability to manage oneself, to force oneself to do things that you may not want to do. It requires, obviously, managing money, which I mentioned is part of budgeting. Understanding failure, understanding risk, and knowing how to avoid or manage risk as best you can. So we've touched on the fact that we hear about the overnight success in business, but you don't hear about all the overnights that go into that overnight success. With that said, let me turn to the other person that's on the call and ask them to introduce him or herself.
Hi, it's Gina Lollo. I wasn't sure if I was the only one other on the call. I was waiting to see if someone else was going to speak. I am a business owner here in Long Island, and I'm a realtor, and I'm part of the business podcast, Business Success Podcast, and the Time to Play Foundation.
Thank you, Gina. At the moment, you're the only one on the call with me this afternoon. And in terms of planning, in terms of goal setting, let me ask you to share what you do more specifically for your real estate business.
In particular for goal setting, I think
yes.
What you were saying before, to break down the goals is super important, because we may have, let's say, this giant goal for, what we want to achieve. But we need to then further break that goal down, into, little small pieces that you can break off and accomplish one at a time. Because sometimes, myself included, you will get, overwhelmed by the giant goal. Whereas if you break it down and you break it down to maybe a monthly goal, a weekly goal, a daily goal, things like that, it's much more achievable. So it keeps the momentum, and the snowball, will grow bigger and bigger until you, really get to that giant goal that you wanted to accomplish. So I think that's important, so that you don't become overwhelmed by a goal that you think may be too large in its natural form. So you'll break it down and take it off. You'll bite it off bit by bit, piece by piece. One bite at a time. I think there's a saying, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, or something like that.
Yes,
so I think,
very definitely.
I think that's super important, and sometimes we miss that.
No, the points you're making, Gina, are extremely worthwhile and very valid, because the one place that we never want to be is overwhelmed. Because when we're overwhelmed, we are not able to know what to do next. We're not able to get started. We're not able to do something. It's the equivalent of being somewhat paralyzed by the multitude of ideas, things, projects that you have that are causing that overwhelmed feeling. And that is one place that we don't want to be, so the way to avoid it is by spending time to plan. Now, we certainly have used the expression previously in these podcasts, and everybody has heard the expression that planning to fail is failing to plan is planning to fail, for reversing it. But that is certainly true, because when you don't know what you want to do next, you're going to be at an impasse. And when you have a host of things to do, and as an entrepreneur, you certainly have a multitude of different aspects of the business that need to be covered, that need to be taken care of. And regardless of the background, regardless of the training, regardless of the experience of the entrepreneur, if they are in a business startup mode and they're working by themselves, or they're working with possibly one or two other people, maybe it's a partnership and they have a partner, maybe they've had the ability to hire one or two people initially to help with different functions and different parts of the operation. But under any circumstance, they're going to be required to know an awful lot about a lot of different areas. We mentioned that they certainly need to be a salesperson. They're going to have to be able to sell that product or service to the marketplace. But that requires a knowledge of marketing. That requires, or may require, some knowledge about advertising. Let me say as an aside that advertising is very expensive and usually is something that is primarily used by larger organizations who can afford the opportunity of spending money that is throwing their name out there, that is trying to build a brand that may not result in any specific return on their investment. So when we talk about marketing one's business, we want to keep ourselves restricted to marketing as much as we can, because marketing is much less expensive, and marketing may be finding another organization that you can tie together with. It may be finding somewhat of a partner, somebody who has knowledge in their business that can help you in your business, and vice versa. It may be finding somebody who's in the marketing business, and you can possibly trade your goods or services for their knowledge and for their ability to help you determine what needs to be done to market your business. We've mentioned before, but certainly worth mentioning again, that there are a host of organizations available in any particular market. Here on Long Island, we have an organization called the Long Island Advancement for Small Business, which is another not-for-profit organization which offers entrepreneurs the ability to come on a monthly basis to learn certain parts of what is necessary to run their business successfully. They also have what they call a new entrepreneur group that meets monthly. Both these meetings happen to be at the campus of Adelphi University in Hauppauge, and at those meetings they go over specific items that are necessary for business success, because again, I can't repeat it too often, it's never easy. It's never without perseverance. It requires patience, it requires persistence, it requires a lot of time, and it requires the ability to learn all the different areas or find resources to cover those areas. We're talking about accounting, we're talking about communication, we're talking about finance, we're talking about human resources, we're talking about leadership, we're talking about management, as I mentioned before, organizational development and time management. All these areas are necessary if you're going to run a successful business. If you're going to start and build a successful business, all these areas need to be addressed, but it is all but impossible for one or two people to have background, experience, and knowledge in all these areas. So therefore, you need to turn to outside resources. As we've touched on, turning to outside resources can be expensive. It can be expensive, but it also can allow you to spend time doing what you do best. But one of the things that many entrepreneurs fail to do is they're too busy working in their business to work on their business. And when I say work on your business, I mean that it's necessary to, on a continual basis, be able to step back and look at what is happening, look at where you're going, look at where you intend to go, look at what those longer-range goals are. As Gina said before, you have already broken those down into monthly and then weekly and then daily goals. But it is necessary to constantly review and reevaluate where you stand, because the only constant in life is change, and certain things that we expect today is going to happen next week or next month or next year are certainly far from what takes place. I know I was reading in today's paper that the price of oil is now down, as of yesterday, to almost $30 a barrel. It hasn't been that low since 2008, and unfortunately it's causing havoc amongst companies that are impacted by oil servicing, many of whom have already gone bankrupt, and many more will go bankrupt as a result of that dramatic drop in the price of oil. Now, for the average consumer, it's nice that we're only paying a little over $2 a gallon for gasoline at this point in time, which certainly makes a big difference as opposed to when we were in the $4 and $5 area. But had an organization not planned for something like this to happen, they would be one of those that are currently in bankruptcy or about to declare bankruptcy because they did not expect that they were going to be selling their product for far less than they anticipated. These things happen. We can't know what's going to take place in the future. All we have is today, and we can plan for tomorrow, but we can understand that things are going to change, and therefore the plans that we put in place today for tomorrow also need to be changed. We need to be willing to be flexible. We need to be willing to embrace change because change is inevitable. We can't control what other people do. We can't control what other things happen, but we always have the ability to control how we let that impact on us. And one of the ways that we can best control that is by spending time to plan, by projecting what we anticipate is going to be, and by looking at the other possibilities of what may happen if. What will we do when we don't add X number of dollars of revenue in the next quarter? How will we overcome that? How will we still maintain the services that we're providing for our clients or customers? These are all parts of the ability to step back and to look at what we're doing and to figure out what we need to do and what we may need to do under circumstances, some of which we cannot foresee. We'll talk for a minute about a goal setting. Goal setting is critical component for success, because when we write a goal, we act on the goal and the goal acts on us. But when we set a target date for our goal, that is a guesstimate at best. We can't possibly know absolutely on day one on a long-term goal if we're going to accomplish it on the intended target date. Yes, we obviously can do that when we set our daily goals, and we can even get in the habit of setting weekly goals that can be accomplished in a weekly time frame. But when we're talking about long range, I'm talking now about monthly or yearly or even longer than that, longer range, we cannot anticipate what is going to happen down the road. Nobody can foresee what is currently taking place in the economy on Long Island. Nobody could anticipate what is currently taking place in the world, and certainly we've never experienced a situation that we are currently looking at as far as the elections later on this year to elect a new president. This has been something that is far different than we've ever seen before. So whether it's knowing what's going to happen with the country, knowing what's going to happen with your local economy, knowing what's going to happen with your business, because your business is also something that is going to be rapidly changing and evolving in many different ways. Companies that were not able to anticipate and not able to embrace that change are companies that are no longer in business. There are many examples of business icons that were in existence 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago that are no longer in existence, or they are in existence today still in a totally different business. Many people will not be aware that Woolworths is now Foot Locker, and a number of other companies in those areas. They certainly are no longer running the hundreds of FW Woolworth stores that were in existence. Somebody mentioned in a conversation I had a couple of days ago, Times Square stores, which used to be very prevalent throughout Long Island, and I believe in a couple of other states. They've long been out of existence. I did business many years ago with W.T. Grant, which was a similar operation to Woolworths. At one point in time, they had a couple of hundred stores, both in New York as well as the surrounding states, and they have been gone for probably, at this point in time, 30 years or more. It happens because they did not embrace change. Now we have Apple, we have Google, we have eBay, we have all sorts of new entities that are taking over and taking control. Let's talk about automotive for a second. The automotive industry has been impacted dramatically by change because we certainly are hearing and seeing and going to be looking at very shortly both self-driving cars as well as electric vehicles. Now, it's been a long time since they talked about the advent of electric vehicles, but now they are something that is in effect. They are readily available, and they're going to be increasing. Self-driving cars are, again, something that was envisioned in the future many, many years ago, but at that point in time it was more science fiction. Well, now that science fiction has become a reality. And when we are able to take time to plan, we can possibly understand that changes that we can't envision are going to occur. But by planning for what we can control, which is ourselves, we're better able to do that. Let me throw it back to Gina for some thoughts that she may have, and for some reason I see that she's been taken off the microphone. Now she's back on. No, excuse me.
Sorry, am I here?
You are there, Gina. Yes, I can.
Something happened with my voice conferencing phone, so I'm now on my cell phone. So I apologize for that. I don't know what happened.
No reason to apologize. You're back with us.
But I'm here. I heard you the whole time. Okay.
Okay. So let me ask for your thoughts on some of the things that I was sharing.
I think the ability to embrace change is tremendous, and the staying flexible. I think from what you were sharing with us, I think those are the two things that stuck in my mind. Very brightly, because I think if you're able to stay flexible, you're able to move with the times and move with the economy and change things as you need to with the changing market, with the changing ways people get their information via the internet or different websites and things like that. And to embrace that change, I think it's super important. A lot of people get stuck in the old ways of doing things, and unfortunately, that's not always your way to success. You definitely need to embrace change and sort of take it as it comes, look at it for what it is, and change yourself, change maybe the ways you've been doing things. To improve on what you could do moving forward. I think that those two things are very, very important for people in business to remember, and everyone in general, to remember, and especially if you're in business.
Gina, you're absolutely correct. Embracing change is critical because, as I said before, change is a constant. Change is something that we're going to face whether we want to or not. Unfortunately, most people, majority of the population, in fact, just about everybody, everybody is a creature of habit. And one of the things I've learned in my training and development business is that roughly 95% of what we do every day, we do by habit. And when I talk about habit, I'm also referring to attitudes, which are habits of thinking. You think some way again and again and again, it becomes reflex, it becomes automatic. And those attitudes are what drive our behavior. Our behavior determines our results. So that the only way to get different results is to change the behavior, and the easiest way to change the behavior is to change the attitude that's driving that behavior. So embracing change is certainly critical, certainly necessary, but unfortunately as human beings we have a tendency to resist. We have a tendency to do the things that we're comfortable in doing, do the things that we like to do the things that were easy to do the things that we're used to doing. Those may not be the things that we need to do to get us where we want to go, but again, that's where the goal setting comes into play, because if you don't have your goals in front of you from the beginning, you don't know where you want to go, and therefore you don't know what you're going to need to do in order to get there. So
Right.
being flexible and being able to embrace change is all part and parcel of what we're talking about here for the ability to plan in advance, to know what you're going to need to do tomorrow or what you expect to do tomorrow in order to accomplish what you want to reach in a longer range time frame. Now, let me just step back again and say that these business podcasts are being brought to you by Time to Play Foundation, timetoplay.com, and people like myself and Gina are giving up our own time. We usually have a couple of other experienced entrepreneurs on the phone. Obviously, they were not able to join this conversation this afternoon, but they will be back on future conversations because we speak weekly from noon to 12:30. The founder of the foundation, Doreen Guma, is enjoying a well-deserved vacation, so she's not available for today's podcast. But Doreen is a person who tries to give of herself as much as she can in every way possible in order to help other people. And she has certainly learned at a comparatively young age that the ability to enjoy ourselves and enjoy our life is our decision. We always can decide how we let what happens impact on us. Not saying it's easy. I'm not suggesting that in any way, shape, or form. But we can give ourselves the ability to step back and say, when something happens, how am I going to let this impact on me? What am I going to do since I'm now affected or impacted by whatever it may be? Let me just ask Gina for any last thoughts before we close today's podcast. Gina, any further thoughts?
Something that you just brought up in my mind, that I just read something the other day where it says your attitude is everything, and that something that actually boils an egg softens a potato. And I thought that was pretty profound. So, it is our way. When you were speaking of the Time to Play Foundation, it's very important that our attitudes stay positive and that we, it's all the way we approach different things in life. So I thought that was a very profound little statement there.
Absolutely,
and I thank you
Gina.
for your wisdom.
Those are certainly good analogies because, again, it's been learned over many years that we get what we expect, so that we always want to look at the glass as half full. And as an entrepreneur, in regards to a business, we always want to think positive. We always want to look at the positive outcome, and even though it may not always happen, by looking for it, it's going to happen more frequently than not. When we expect something negative to occur, unfortunately, we've all been conditioned negatively, and those negative occurrences happen too far often. But we can control to some extent how we look at things, and that certainly is very, very important. So, Gina, those are very good points. With that said, let me thank everybody for future listening to this podcast. One of the advantages we have with these business success podcasts is that you can tune in any time. We understand that not everybody is available from noon to 12:30 on Tuesdays, but these podcasts are available at any time. You're also able to go back and listen to previous podcasts where we've talked about things like, as I said before, self-management, risk, failure, being a salesperson, planning with a business plan, managing yourself, managing your money, and understanding that failure is something that is going to be faced because success is built on failure. Unfortunately, one of the things that is never taught in our education system is exactly that. And that's one of the things that every entrepreneur needs to learn. Anybody that is looking for business success needs to understand that there's going to be failures along the way. And if we talk about specifics of any of the giant companies, you could read a litany of failures, time and time again. most obvious one that everybody will know of is R.H. Macy, who failed 7 times before Macy's became the institution that it is today. And Macy's now is suffering in many ways financially because they are not being able to keep up with change, because we're now moving from an experience that is personal in store to experience that is online, because of the internet, which certainly was not something that people could envision 50 and 60 years ago. So again, with that said, please join us in the future for these business success podcasts that are brought to you by the Time to Play Foundation. Please go to timetoplay.com, take a look at the website. There is a tremendous amount of information available that can help you learn to enjoy your life, learn to succeed, both personally and professionally. Let me thank Gina for being on the call today. Let me thank all those you are going to listen in the future, and let me wish everybody a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Recently, Verizon had to use tiny red balls to try to make you think they had a much better network than Sprint. But there's one big thing they left out. The new Sprint LTE Plus network delivers faster download speeds than Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. While Verizon seems to be focused on tiny balls, Sprint has been obsessively focused on building the network of the future. And to celebrate, Sprint is cutting their rates in half. Switch to Sprint and save 50% on most Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile rates. You get the new Sprint LTE Plus network with faster download speeds than Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. And we'll even cover your cost to switch, up to $650 per line. Only from Sprint. Better for less.
Claim based on Sprint's analysis of average LTE download speeds using Nielsen and MP data. Speeds may vary. Offer coverage not available everywhere. Excludes taxes, surcharges, add-on, and premium content. Subject to new line port activation fee and credit. See website for eligible plans. Savings through 1/8/18 after pay full amount. Restrictions apply. Buy every reward card after online registration and phone turn-in.